Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It's about 8 AM on Friday morning and we've got an absolutely beautiful day. It is quite nippy down here, so we will go and start a little fire and make ourselves a cup of coffee, but I did want to try and do as much filming down here today as possible because Saturday and Sunday is looking a little bit wet and I don't know whether I'm going to get down here. So we're going to kick things off with the Novemeber Plot Tour. We'll have a good old scout around the plot and see what's changed over the last month or so. But before we get started with anything, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So Thompson & Morgan, they're a really big seed company here in the UK. They sell seeds, plants, anything garden related, they will have you covered. But they've actually reached out to me recently as they've used one of my videos on their blog. Now the blog is all about currant bushes, and now is a great time to be taking care of your currant bushes, pruning them, taking cuttings, but also planting bare root plants in the winter time. Now if you remember, about 6 months ago I did have a problem with the blister aphid, and I've done a little video all about it and how to take care of your currant bushes. And they've used that video on their blog, so what I will do is I'll pop a little link down in the description below just in case you want any advice or helpful tips on how to look after your currant bushes. Not only that, but they've also given me a free plant. So it's a sapphire blueberry bush and they have these beautiful, really vivid pink berries. That won't come to me until March next year, but it's something really to look forward to. Over the next month or so, I will be doing some videos about how you can take cuttings from your fruit bushes, how you can prune your fruit bushes, and I'll also do some videos on planting them bare rooted. But yes, thank you very much Thompson & Morgan for reaching out to me. It means hell of a lot for such a small channel to get that little bit of publicity out there. So yeah, thank you very much, and also thank you for the free plant. And then not only that, but in the next couple of weeks I am off to Manchester. So my little sister started university, it's her first year, so I'm going to go up on the train and I'm going to go and spend the weekend with her. So that does mean there's probably not going to be any videos that weekend, but it is a few weeks away. But what it was, I just wanted to reach out. If there's any Mancs out there or anybody who's visited Manchester before in the past, please let me know what I should go and visit as a gardener. I know winter probably isn't the best time to be walking around any gardens, but if you've got any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. And then finally, I have bought myself a little treat. So I've had this plot, what, 5 years now, 4 or 5 years, and I've never had a Christmas tree down here. So I went out to the shops yesterday and I brought myself a real Christmas tree. Now it's a little bit too early to get it decorated yet, but I'm going to find a nice little home for it. And then in the next few weeks, once we hit December, I'll give it a little decoration and also some lights, just to sort of make the plot look a little bit festive. I can be a bit of a Grinch, but I think this year it's time to change and really throw myself into the Christmas spirit. So I'll show you the Christmas tree in a little while, but first of all I want to start a little fire to warm myself up, and then we'll go and start up at the top where we park my car and we'll start the plot tour. So this is the view from where I park my car. Excuse the sun because it is still quite low because it's quite early in the morning. Now I do normally park my car just on this bit here, which is why it's looking a little bit scraggly, but I'm going to leave that grass until the springtime because there's plenty of insects that are going to be in there for now and it's not really bothering anyone because the car's normally there. But as you can see, all the wood chip paths are all done on this side, so we've done all of these over the last few weeks and that makes the plot look so much neater and tidier. It is a lot of work, but it's totally worth it. And I guess another major thing that has changed is I've taken all the sunflowers down, apart from that little one just over there, because all the seed heads had been nibbled off by the rats anyway, so there wasn't any food on there for the birds and they were just looking a little bit of a mess, so I've just chucked them straight onto the compost heap. Down here we have got the 2 compost bins, so they're my 2 biggest compost heaps, and if you remember I did have a wasp nest in here over the summer, which is why I haven't given these a turn for a little while. The wasp nest was down here, and even until a couple of weeks ago we did have a few wasps flying in and out of there, and I'm a little bit worried that the queen is going to be hibernating in there over the winter time, so I will give that a real gentle turn. I'll try and leave this area as much as I can, as I'm pretty sure that's where the nest was. That one I'll definitely give a turn. Now, because they are quite big, giving them a turn isn't a necessity, but getting that air in there and a bit of airflow will certainly help all of that start to break down. Now, you might remember the big old den that we had in here, but it does look like whatever caused that hole hasn't come back, because this is a lot smaller now. So it was either a fox or a badger. Foxes do like to dig trial dens, but badgers also like to eat wasp nests, and we know that there is one in here, so it could have been either. I do want to try and get a little nature cam this Christmas, just to see what I can see going down on the plot when I'm not here. Down here we've got the apple tree. I believe it's called Fiesta. It didn't do too well this year because we did have a problem with the codlin moth, so I will need to set some pheromone traps for next year. But if anybody's got any ideas on how to do this organically or naturally, please do let me know in the comments below. Winter is the perfect time to start pruning your apple trees, so give it another month or so and I'll show you how to do that, because I've got this apple tree and then we've got a couple of pear trees as well that need a real good trim up this year. And just below the apple tree we've got a few little wildflowers, so we've got some iris, some foxgloves, some poached eggplant as well, and because we had so much calendula in there we should start to see them start to germinate between now and springtime. All of these are hardy little plants, but if we do get a really bad frost, you might see some of the calendula start to die back, but don't worry, you should have plenty of seeds in that soil to germinate next year. At the back here we have got the rhubarb, and you'll notice that will start to die back in these cold and frosty nights, so I do just like to go around and pick up some of the dead leaves and stick them onto the compost heap. A lot of those leaves have already died and gone into the soil and been drawn down by the worms, just to feed those plants a little bit more, but just go careful. You don't want to be pulling the leaves from the plant. If they're still attached, leave them on, because they'll be putting more energy down into that crown for next year. And then the 2 trees in this bed, we've got an apple over here. Again, we had the codlin moth on that one. And then over here is a pear, which never really seems to do well, but the pears that you do get are really juicy and big. So like I say, I have got a few trees that I need to prune this winter, so keep your eyes out for that video over the next couple of months, because I'll give you lots of tips and helpful advice on how to best prune your trees back. We just need to wait for all those leaves to drop off and that tree to go into its dormancy period. Down in this main bed we have got onions and garlic. We've got 1, 2, 3 beds of the onions, which were planted out about a month and a half ago, and then just over the last couple of weeks we've planted 3 rows of garlic in there, and they're now starting to show their little sprouts above the soil level. If you remember last year I didn't have a very good harvest with my onions and my garlic, so I've picked the most sunniest spot throughout winter all the way through to summer in the hope that they grow nice and big this year. Now, because I did have such a bad harvest, I have gone a little bit extra on the garlic and onion this year, but honestly I'm not too fussed because I use one with near enough every meal. Down in this bed, it's quite similar to the bed that we've just had a look at. So we've got the garlic in this big area here. This row I planted in September, this row in October, and then I've done the rest of the bed throughout the whole of November. I was going to do a line in December, but I just found that some of the garlic was starting to go soft and I didn't want to waste my money. Then in the middle there we've got the Verbena bonariensis, and I'm going to let that be in the hope that it's going to self-seed around the plot, but it also feeds the finches, as I believe they love those seed heads. Now, looking at the September planted garlic bulbs, they are looking a little bit leggy. They don't look too good, so maybe September is a little bit early, but we'll wait until harvest until we make a judgment on that one. And then in this little bed just down here we've got a parsnip, which is volunteered, didn't put that in there, and then we've also got some sorrel at the back there and a couple of leeks as well. So I need to think about what I can plant in there. I have got some shallots to plant and also some elephant garlic, so they might end up in that bed. Then on the far end we have got 3 rows of garlic. Yeah, I think it's 3 rows of garlic, but I was a little bit silly in that I forgot that I'd put the garlic in there and I sowed a load of green manure, so that's all starting to germinate now, so I am going to have to give that a little bit of a weed just to make sure that it doesn't affect the growth of those garlic bulbs. And then at the back, we've got a little bed along there. So come April time, that is going to be full of beautiful colours from the tulips. They've been there for quite a few years now. But we've got a hyssop in there, we've got a scabious and also a bay tree. But there's just so much grass in there that I really need to dig out. But I'm just always worried that I'm going to damage those tulip bulbs. So we'll see if we can give that a weed over the next couple of weeks anyway. I really need to think about giving this hyssop a real good chop back, so we'll probably do that a little bit later on. I love hyssop. I don't think you'd really use it for food, as it smells a little bit like Vic Vapor Rub, but it really is beautiful. Probably great for soaps or maybe candle making as well. Look at those bright red stems on this bay tree. It really has kicked in and put on a lot of growth this year, but you can use this in cooking as well. So I use this in pickling, and it's the leaves that you use, so you can always pick a few, take them home to dry for a little bit, and yeah, try and have a look online to find some recipes. The little DIY planter that we use, so in the top here we've got a Sempervermum. Now these are called house leeks, hens and chicks depending on where you're from, and then round here we've got some of the succulents, and these are really starting to fill up that space now. So hopefully give it a few more years and this should be covered with a beautiful blanket of greenery. Now I know these look a little bit exotic, but they're absolutely fine with the frost, and they'll do fine over winter out here. So down here we have got the pineberry bed, and we gave this a good old weed last weekend, but I've still got berries on here and they're still producing flowers even this time in the year. Now do go careful if you do buy some pine berries, because they can be quite thuggish. I only started with 6 plants in here, and as you can see they've spread like wildfire. But it does give you plenty of fruit throughout the year, so it's definitely worth having a little patch of pine berries. This is the gooseberry bush, and it's got a little bit wild this year, and as you can see we've still got leaves on it, so it hasn't gone dormant just yet. So we need to wait until the depths of winter, and then we can give this a real good prune back. And I'm going to use some of those prunings to take some hardwood cuttings so that we get some free extra plants next year. But don't worry guys, I'll be releasing a video in the next couple of months, and I'll give you lots of tips and helpful advice on how to look after your fruit bushes, especially during the winter time. Talking of gooseberries, we've got the gooseberries underneath the pear tree here. Now I don't bother covering these up because these are for the birds, and the pigeons absolutely adore them. And then up here we have got the pear tree as well. Now because we had such a heavy crop on it this year, there are a few branches on here that did snap under the weight, so I do need to focus on those when giving all our fruit trees a real good prune over. Snapped branches are a really easy way for an infection or a disease to get into your tree, so come winter I'll show you what to do if you've got any snapped branches on your fruit trees. I've still got this little fella in the ground, so we think it's either an ash or a rowan, I believe, speaking to Graham and a few others in the comments. And then in there we've also got an oak tree that I need to think about getting out, because I don't think the pear tree is going to be too fond of having 2 possibly big trees growing next to it. Down under the pear tree, this is the little wildlife pond. Not much is going on in here, and I probably do need to give it a bit of a tidy up. Because it's underneath a tree, it does get a lot of leaves fall in there. So before it starts to freeze up, I will think about giving that a good clear out for the wildlife. So down here we have got the old beetroot bed. Now they didn't do too well in here because the artichokes did block out a lot of the sunlight. And on top I have just mulched this with all the cuttings from the Jerusalem artichokes. Now I'm going to have carrots in here next year, so I don't want to add compost as it might make it a little bit too nutritious, which can cause the carrots to fork. So I thought if I just chuck on the cuttings from the Jerusalem artichokes, that's just going to protect the soil from the really harsh rain that we can get. Come spring, if there's anything still on there that's quite woody, I will just chuck it straight onto the compost heap. Down here we have got the carrot bed, so I was a little bit worried that we weren't going to have any carrots for Christmas, but look, I think we're going to be absolutely fine. I think a couple of them might be quite chunky already, so I might harvest a few of them today, but the rest I think we're going to save for Christmas dinner. Down in this big bed we have got 1, 2, 3, for 5 beds in here. So in these two we have got the green manure. I only sowed them last weekend, so nothing's germinating just yet. Then we've got the parsnips. Now we did harvest a parsnip last weekend and it was absolutely massive, so yeah, really chuffed with how they've come along. And then in the 2 beds at the end we did have some green manure in there and we just chopped it right back. So there isn't a huge amount going on in these beds at the moment, but I do need to think about what I want to plant in here next year, because it does get a little bit of shade from the elder tree. So this bed, this is going to be the asparagus bed next year. I've never grown asparagus before, but I do know that we can't plant the crowns out until April time. So I've given it a real good mulch with some compost, and I've also got some horse manure. So I will be popping that onto this bed because asparagus are really hungry plants. I want to top this up with as much nutrition as possible. And then we have got one little self-seeded foxglove in the middle too. So not much going on in this bed for a few more months, but I do need to have a look in the seed catalogues to pick what asparagus I'm going for. If anybody does grow any asparagus and has got any really good varieties, please do let me know in the comments below. All the leaves are now starting to turn on the fruit bushes, so we've got a red currant, white currant and a pink currant in here. So once they all start to fall off, we can start giving these a real good prune back along with all the other fruit bushes I've got down on the plot. Down here we've got the old Woollerton Hall Rose from David Austin's, and I did start with just one stem, but it has put on so much growth this year. It's got a beautiful sort of whitey creamy flower and it does smell absolutely gorgeous, and it flowered probably from sort of June well into August. Do need to make sure that I start tying this into the trellis, and the whole idea is that I want this to spread all around the back and all over this sort of grill trellis that I've got. So the grape is now starting to die back. I didn't get any grapes on it this year. The first year I got a few little red grapes, but not this year I'm afraid. But we'll give this a real good prune over the next few months because this is definitely in its dormant stages now, and it's my first year pruning back a grape. So I'm going to do lots of research and I'll give you guys some real helpful tips on how to do it. So here we go guys, I have treated myself to a Christmas tree for the first time down on the plot. So this is a Norwegian spruce. Now they're probably not the best because they do drop their leaves if you take them indoors, but this is going to live down on the plot. And the other great thing about a Norwegian spruce is that it really has that lovely pine smell to it. Now it is quite a small little tree, but I want to get festive on the plot, so we're going to decorate this come December time. Now I know a few people from work might be watching this video and they know me as a little bit of a Grinch, but I think it's time for things to change. So yeah, we'll get some battery operated lights on here and a little bit of tinsel and a few baubles, and hopefully that will just make the plot that little bit more festive and pretty over the winter time. Then whilst I was at Dobby's, I did find these marked down bamboo, and I'm trying to create a little bit of a fence or barrier down towards the back of my plot where I was planning on putting the nature seating area. So we're going to see if we can get these planted in a little bit later on today. And then I also got some shallots and some elephant garlic. So we've got germ or shallots. I realised that I didn't have any sown this year, so we'll get those planted out a bit later. And we've also got some of the elephant garlic. Now these are quite big bulbs, but they don't taste as garlicky as your normal garlic. But yeah, we'll get these planted up a little bit later on, but you'll probably see that in tomorrow's video. Down here is all the horse poo that I got excited about a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just going to let that rot down because it is still quite fresh and it probably won't do too good on the bed. So yeah, we'll let that rot down. I might cover it up just to stop all those nutrients leaching out in the rain. This is the newest compost heap on the plot, so I have got 4 large ones in total, but yeah, everything on here is quite new, so I'm not even going to think about giving that a turn this year. I will just keep adding to it, and then next year is when we can start to give it a real good turn over. And then round here behind the shed, this is where I was trying to do a seating area, but I do like to focus on the main plot before I start focusing on other areas. But as you can see, the weeds are already starting to grow back. So this is the area where I want to plant the bamboo up, just to create a little bit of a barrier here, because you can see straight into the neighbour's plot, just to give a little bit more privacy when I do make a little seating area around here. So we'll get that bamboo planted up a little bit later on today. Again, that will be in tomorrow's video. We've got the main pond, and as you can see, it's looking really clear in there from where we gave it a really good clear out not too long ago. But you will find that blanket weed doesn't really grow in the autumn and the winter time anyway. Some of the plants, they need a real good cut back now, especially the iris at the back. That's started to go brown, and also the forget-me-nots, the water forget-me-nots, and the mint could also do with a cut back. I've seen a few little birdies in here having a little bath, but you probably won't see any frogs or newts, as they prefer to hibernate outside of the water. So it's a good idea to have some nooks and crannies with any logs or branches that you might have, and even rocks and stones, just to create some nice hiding places for them to hibernate over the winter time. But I will leave this pond now until the spring, because it will just tick over nicely. You could put a little ball, sort of a golf ball or a ping pong ball, on top of the water just to stop it freezing over completely, so that some animals can still get to the water over winter. At the back here, this is the wildlife area, and we've got the bird feeding stations as well, and it is looking quite wild at the moment, but I do like to leave it this time of year because it creates a nice habitat for all of those insects to hibernate over winter. I will need to think about giving it a bit of a clear out soon. It's just because I've got those beautiful hellebores, and they start to flower in the winter time, so I want to be able to see those gorgeous blooms. We've still got some flowers going in there. The helenium, they're still going strong, achillea, and I think there might even be a marigold as well. We've got all sorts of plants that have self-seeded in there. We've got foxglove, we've got forget-me-nots, poached eggplants, calendula, so it's going to be really colourful next year come spring, summertime. We've got the hosta. It has really started to die back, and all of those leaves have gone back into the soil to feed it for next year. But this year it did get attacked by the slugs really badly, so I'm going to try it with a garlic wash next year, so keep a little eye out for that one. So here's the other planter that we made up of the Symphovermums and also some alpines, and it's starting to really take off. They're starting to spread out, but it'll probably be a couple of years before it really starts to take effect. But I just love how it blends in with the pond in the background and the wildlife area, and this Lewissa, which is a beautiful dainty white flower, has just kept on giving and giving. So it's definitely worth getting some of those into your garden or little pots. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to how this is going to look in a couple of years' time. Everything in Hospital Corner is doing absolutely fine. So these are all either discounted plants or plants that I've propagated into more plants. So we've got some grasses down here, hydrangea, black elder, the corkscrew hazel. We've also got some fruit trees, some bamboo. We've got all sorts, but yeah, it is all coming on absolutely fine. I am going to plant out the bamboo a little bit later on today, but everything else will be planted out probably come spring. Nothing going on in my first ever little pond that I built. It is really diddy, and I only seem to get frogs in here in the summertime. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be much going on in here. I tell you what, it has been lovely and toasty in here. So it's reached 21.3 and it hasn't dropped below 0, but I don't think it has anyway this week. But we'll give it a reset because it's good to know what's going on from week to week inside the poly house. I really do need to give it a really nice weed in here. It's looking a little bit of a mess, and I would like to try and grow some things in here. December isn't a great time to be sowing any seeds because of light levels, so come January, that's when we'll probably sow some seeds. So in the poly house, I've got all sorts. We've got seedlings on the go, but also some cuttings from earlier in the year. So these are some foxgloves, which we potted up last weekend, and they seem to be coming on quite nicely. And then at the back here, this is where we've got a lot of the cuttings. So we've got some fuchsias, we've got some rosemary cuttings as well. We've got some roses, which seem to be doing really well, along with those three at the back there, which I think are the best ones. Got a little pelargonium, and that will just overwinter in here. Don't water them throughout winter, they'll be absolutely fine. Just keep them in the soil. And then down here we've got some foxgloves, so I do need to think about potting these up as well. I did just get the biggest ones out of there the other day. Then as for the seedlings, we have got some bunny tail grass, so that's this stuff just over here. We've also got some candy tuft, which seems to be doing fine. Clarkia didn't do too well. We've got a few, but they are rather leggy, so I don't know how well they're going to fare. And then the larkspur, the peony poppy and the cornflower, I didn't get much from them at all, so we'll probably have to do some more sowings of some of those come January time. And then up at the back here, we've still got some of those sempervermums at the back, so I'll need to find a home for some of those. I might do another little planter at some point. We've got the coreopsis, which I divided up earlier this year, and they seem to be doing okay. The dogwood cuttings, they're doing fine. They've all started to sprout. Now I think those leaves will die back this time of year anyway, but they should have a nice healthy root system starting on them. Then down here we've just got a little astilbe that should start dying back quite soon. And then in here we've got a few of the cuttings that I took from my nan's hanging baskets back at home. So we've got some pelargoniums, which are some, I think we've got peach, pink, and some beautiful double blooms as well. Also got some fuchsias and some other cuttings from plants that I'm not too sure what they were, but this is a perennial wallflower, and it's a lovely purple colour, and they're absolutely beautiful. I think they flower from sort of February well into November, so yeah, I'll keep you updated with that one. And then down here we have got some foxgloves as well. Now all my foxgloves are alba, so they'll be a beautiful white. Then as we move down the bench, we've got some more pelargoniums. Now, like I say, I don't water these throughout the winter months, and I just keep them in the same soil. They will dry out a little bit, but then come spring, summer, all you've got to do is give these a real good water, and they should just spring back to life. Now, I was a little bit naughty in that I forgot to take my colocasia home with me, and they do not like the cold, and I think this might be a little bit too damaged, but I am going to take that home today just to see if I can nurse that back to health. And we've got some more pelargoniums at the back there just to overwinter, and then we've got the onions. Now, these really didn't do too well at all, but I did hear that you can sow these in December, January time, so we might have to do another little sowing of those. And then these are just some more of the pine berries. Now, I don't want any more pine berries. I've got enough pine berries, so I reckon I'll give these away to some of the people down on the allotment. But since I've made this bench in here, it's been an absolute godsend. I've never grown so much this time of year, so I'm really looking forward to growing some more stuff come the beginning of 2024. So we've got the 4 box beds here. Now this bed here, I haven't got anything in there because that is sat in so much shade throughout the winter. There's not much point of me planting anything in there, but I am thinking some lettuce or some peas because they don't like too much sunlight. And then in here, we haven't got too much in the actual bed itself, but we've got some tulips in the 4 pots here. And then in these last 2 beds, we've got a load of spring bulbs. So in this one, we have got a load of the allium bulbs, which we planted just a couple of weeks ago. And then in the far one, we've got the tulips. Now, because I bought so many spring bulbs, I thought I'd stick them into these boxes, and I'm going to use them as cut flowers. These are my potato pots. These are made out of the cut up water butts that I found on Gumtree over the years. And they're just really big, and they really do hold in the potatoes really well and stop the problem with keel slugs. Now, I'm not going to do anything with these beds for now, and these will just stay as they are until the springtime, where we'll give them a good old fertilizer before we plant those spuds in. Not much going on in these beds other than growing a lot of weeds at the moment, but they are starting to go to flower, so I will try and give this bed a bit of a weed over the next couple of weeks. It's a bit sad to see this bed empty because it did have the dahlia in, which brought so much colour to the plot for quite a while, but we've buried that under a good 5, 6, maybe even 7 inches of soil there just to protect it over the winter time, because they do not like really wet, soggy soil, and they don't like the frost either. Is my last compost heap. That is really starting to rot down quite nicely. I haven't added to it really over the last few months, so that is really due a real nice turnover. So maybe that's something we could do over the next couple of weeks just to get that rotting down a little bit faster over the autumn and winter time. Not a huge amount going on in the beds behind the poly house, so I did sow some broad beans a few weeks back, and they all seem to have germinated really well, so the mice hadn't found them. Now these are spring sown ones, but we've tried them in autumn, so we're going to see how they do, and we have had a few frosty nights and they seem to be absolutely fine. And in the back raised bed we've got a couple of kale plants in there. Now because I haven't got many, I am just going to save them for our Christmas dinner. But they're doing absolutely fine, and as with any brassica, they are fine over the winter period and even with a good old frosting. And then finally, a job that I really must do is get rid of these beans. They're looking a little bit of a mess now, and a lot of the pods have started to go a little bit mouldy, so I don't think the beans are going to be worth saving at this point, but it's okay because I have saved quite a lot of the beans that I grew this year. And then we've got the 2 sunflowers, but they have still got the heads on them, so there's still some seeds in there for the birdies, so I will let them be for the time being. So the main flower bed up at the top of the plot, everything is starting to die back now, so I do need to get in here and give everything a little bit of a cut back so that it's ready for the springtime. And then all of that nigella that seems to be down this side, I am just going to leave it because that's going to create a really nice protective layer and protect that soil for the time being. And to be fair, it's not looking too wild and it's still looking quite neat. And then finally we have got the fruit cage, so we've got red currants, we've got gooseberries in here, raspberries, blueberries, and we've even got a grape. But as you can see, everything is really starting to die back now, so there isn't much to do in here until everything has lost its leaves, and then we can really give it a good old cut back. Now that we've lost all of the leaves on the grapevine, you can really see just how big it has got in the last couple of years. So we did end up with 4 bunches this year, but I'm hoping for a lot more in the years to come. So I want to do a lot of research and find out the best way to prune your grapevine, because I understand there are a few ways to do it, and it probably shouldn't have this many vines on the one plant. Keep your eyes open for a great pruning video in the next few months, guys. And here's a little view from the grass side entrance, but that brings the Novemeber Plot Tour to an end, guys. So that is all we've got time for today, folks. That is the end of the Novemeber Plot Tour. Now I've got loads of jobs that I need to get done this afternoon. It's only 12 o'clock, so I am going to film all of that, but you're not going to see that until tomorrow's video, because Saturday is going to be an absolute washout. Fingers crossed, there might be some sunshine on Sunday, so hopefully I'll be able to get down here again at the weekend and do a little bit of filming. And if I do, that means some extra content to you guys either on the Monday or the Tuesday. So I'm going to crack on with some of those jobs, but before I do, I'm going to have a spot of lunch, warm myself up round by the fire and have a nice warm cup of coffee. So guys, I will see you again tomorrow for another little adventure down on the plot. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you down here tomorrow. See you later, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you.